All right, everybody, good morning and welcome back. And we've got more rookie stuff to look at here. We are still going through the draft picks the Seattle Seahawks made in 2024. And we are now on to the fifth round, moving on from the fourth round over the last couple of days. We had one pick in the fifth round. From the trade we actually made in the fourth round to move down a little bit to pick up the fifth rounder from Denver. And we got a player that I actually really like a lot. I like his potential. I like his upside. I had a much higher grade on him than a fifth rounder personally. And this was a pick that got me really excited because he was one of my sleepers. I understand that he's a cornerback. I understand that that's not a position that the Seahawks have some dire need at the moment. But that's not really something I'm going to be looking at when I'm looking at a pick in the fifth round. I'm going to be just looking at the player. And I will also admit that I don't know if he's a stellar fit for the Seattle Seahawks Mike Macdonald defense because Macdonald seems to like a certain kind of cornerback, and Pritchett is going to have to prove himself in some regards. But I really like this player. I'm very high on this player personally. It's Nehemiah Pritchett of Auburn. So let's talk about him. Let's figure it out. Let's explore what makes me so excited about him. And as always, we're going to start with the numbers. We're going to look at Nehemiah Pritchett by the numbers. So he's going to be 23. I think he just turned 23 recently. So he'll be 23 when the season starts. He's just over 6 feet tall, 66th percentile in height. So taller than the average cornerback that goes through the combine. 190 pounds, so he's a little bit lighter than the average cornerback, 39th percentile. Arm length is a little above average, 31 and 5/8 inches. So Pete Carroll would probably look at this guy and go, that's not enough. You got to give me a little bit more going on here with the arm length. Most defensive coaches, however, would say that 31 and 5/8 is fine. So I think he'll be okay there. Very small hands, though. Another player that we drafted with tiny hands, 8 and 3/8 inch hands, 5th percentile. His testing was good. The little bit that he did was actually pretty extraordinary. He ran a 4.3640, which is 92nd percentile, like very fast. Also accelerates very quickly. 1.49 10-yard split. You start talking about a sub 1.5 10-yard split, 90th percentile, you've got something. He did do a vert, and it wasn't very good, 29th percentile at 34 and a half inches, but overall, he's got some nice testing scores. So he was at Auburn for 5 years. 2019, he was basically redshirting. He didn't do much. 5 games, 68 snaps total. I think there was like one game he played one snap, so most of the snaps were concentrated around, I think, 4 games in particular. Had 4 tackles, got targeted twice, allowed 1 catch on those 2 targets, 20-yard play. 16 of those yards were after the catch, so he gave up a short catch, and then it went for a pretty decent gain. 85.4 QB rating allowed. So this is far too small of a sample size to say anything about him, right? Like 36 run defense snaps, 32 in coverage, 57 as an outside corner, 3 slot reps, 5 box reps, 1 free safety rep. Graded out fine overall. Tackling grade was actually really good, but again, the sample size is so small. He's on an Auburn defense that was very good this year, 19 and a half points per game allowed, 17th in the country. So there's really not much to say there other than that he was physically present on the roster. 2020 was the first year he really started playing, and he had a nice little year in 2020, 11 games. So he missed, I think, one, and then he may have missed the bowl game. 616 snaps, so he did play a pretty extensive amount when he was out there. 25 tackles, 1 interception, 10 passes defense. So he starts to really show what he can do as a guy making plays on the ball. He starts to show some decent ball skills. And here's the part that should really get you interested in Pritchett. 38 targets in 11 games, so that's like 3.5 a game. 14 catches allowed. So quarterbacks are not successful when they're throwing the ball in his direction. 14 out of 38 is going to win you a lot of support from your coaches. 164 yards on those 14 catches, and he's an outside corner. So the fact that he's allowing, like, what is that? almost a little around, a little more, I think, than 11 yards per reception is totally fine. 68 of those yards were after the catch. One touchdown allowed, so his QB rating allowed this year was 48.6. Missed two tackles, had two penalties. So you can start to see something pretty notable here, something pretty impressive. 329 coverage snaps, 284 run defense snaps, and 3 as a pass rusher. Almost all of his snaps came as an outside corner, played a little bit in the slot, maybe like 3 or 4 snaps a game. Same for box roles, playing basically a box safety. 3 free safety, 3 defensive line snaps as an outside rusher. Graded out really well in all areas except for pass rush, and who cares about that because he only had 3 reps. And Auburn's defense was still quite good. So 2020, we've got a pretty clear picture of this guy as a player. He's really coming along. He's an important part of this defense. Things are going well. You get to 2021. He plays in every game that year for Auburn, 13 games, 617 snaps. So he does actually have a little downtick in his number of snaps played per game, which is probably just because of Auburn's defense not being on the field as much as anything. 27 tackles, 1 interception, 3 passes defensed, so ball skills go bye-bye. 57 targets, so he gets targeted a lot more on basically the same number of snaps. 35 catches, which is not nearly as good as what he did in 2020. It's still not terrible given how often he got targeted, but there's a big difference here. 433 yards allowed in coverage. Almost 200 of that yak. 1 touchdown. So something's different here. He's not having nearly as much success in coverage. 83.4 rating allowed, still not awful or anything like that, but something's up. Had 1 QB pressure, 4 missed tackles, 2 penalties committed, and you can see that almost 400 of his snaps are in coverage, about 213 are as a run defender, 10 times he rushes the quarterback. This next part, I think, kind of gives away the problem. 316 of his snaps came as an outside corner. 239 came as a slot corner. So he suddenly starts playing in the slot a lot more, and his production drops. His effectiveness drops. 54 snaps as a box defender, 1 free safety, 5 defensive line, 5 outside the tackle. Graded out not very well. His only good grade this year was run defense, really, 71.9. But his overall grade was down to 55, 53 tackling, 52.8 coverage. Auburn's defense still really good, almost under 22 points a game, 27th in the country. But this was a disappointment for him for sure. But then we go to 2022, where he plays 12 games, actually plays more snaps, plays 676 snaps, 37 tackles, which is a career high for him. 4.5 for loss. Actually starts getting into the backfield a little bit. And a sack. 8 passes defense. So the ball skills coming back a little bit. He's making plays on the ball with a pretty good amount of regularity. 1 forced fumble. Gets targeted 58 times, but does shave the number of receptions he allows down to 28. So less than half of his targets go for catches. Now we're talking. 346 yards isn't stellar, but it's fine for this many targets. 139 of those yards are yak, and a touchdown, and a 72.9 rating when targeted in coverage. So things definitely got better this year. Things definitely improved. He also had 4 QB pressures, even though he only rushed the passer 7 times. That's pretty good. He had 11 missed tackles. We don't like that. That's 1 a game, basically, and 5 penalties. So there was definitely some bad you got to take with the good here. But what I really want to emphasize here is the strides he made as a cover corner, getting his QB rating allowed down to about 73, playing almost 400 snaps in coverage, 274 in run defense, and like I said, 7 pass rush snaps, 500 outside cornerback reps, 106 in the slot. So there's a clear correlation developing here. When he plays as an outside corner, things seem to go pretty well. But the more you put him in the slot, the more troubles he has making plays on the ball and getting it done in coverage. 67 snaps as a box, I guess you could call him box safety or box defensive back, whatever. 3 free safety snaps. So Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to emphasize here. He graded out pretty well, 70.6 overall, mostly because of his coverage, and he had a decent pass rush grade. The run defense and tackling is starting to drop here, and that's definitely something we're going to have to discuss as it regards to this player. Auburn's defense fell off a cliff this year, though. Allowed 29.5 points a game, 98th percentile. I'm sorry, 90. I don't know why I said percentile. 98th in the country. Bad. Real bad. So that was a disappointment, but he definitely had a better overall year in coverage. And let's see if the correlation holds in 2023. Now, he missed some time this year. And there is one thing worth noting about Pritchett. He has missed a little bit of time in his career. I wouldn't call him injury prone, but he did occasionally miss time. 471 snaps. So he actually kind of had things truncated a little bit for him. Just a little bit. 22 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and an interception. So, again, the ball skills are kind of up and down with him. 3 passes defended. It just depends on what year you check in on him. Some years he's making plays on the ball, some years he's not. Only gets targeted 26 times and allows 12 catches. And even though he played less in 2023, this is still a big improvement in terms of how much he gets picked on. He's not really getting picked on at all. He allows a catch, not even a catch and a half per game. 134 yards, 25 of that is yak, and a touchdown. 58.8 QB rating. So the coverage numbers got a lot better. 1 pressure, only 5 missed tackles, so step in the right direction. 2 penalties committed. We get to his snap counts, which I know is going to be interesting because of what we just went over. About 250 snaps in coverage, 215 as a run, 13 as a run defender. Basically what you would expect for him. Yeah. It looks like by 2023 they kind of figured out what the special sauce was with him, and if you look at these numbers, it's very clear. 427 snaps as a corner on the outside, only 13 as a slot, and his coverage numbers get much better. So the point I'm trying to make here is this is a player who wants to play on the outside. 27 box reps, 2 as a free safety, 1 as a defensive line outside the tackle. Graded out fairly well, 71 grade. Run defense grade is still lackluster. Tackling grade is still pretty far down there. Pass rush grade is kind of irrelevant because he didn't do it enough. Coverage grade, 74.5. Things headed in the right direction for him there. That's what I kind of want to focus on here. And Auburn's defense was now above average, 22.5 points a game, basically. So take that for what it is. And I think that paints a pretty clear picture of the kind of player that Nehemiah Pritchett is. In his career at Auburn, he played 50 games, almost 2,500 snaps, 115 tackles, 5.5 for loss, 1 sack, 3 interceptions, 24 passes defensed, and a forced fumble. So you look at those numbers, and you're probably not terribly impressed. That's like not even 2.5 tackles a game in 50 games played. Not even 2.5 tackles a game. That's 3 interceptions in 50 games. That's not even 1 pass defense every 2 games. So there is some inconsistent production here. However, when he's targeted in coverage, he's very good. He allowed 90 catches on 181 career targets. That's less than half. So if you target this guy more than half the time, it ends up as an incomplete pass or worse. Less than 1,100 yards allowed on 181 targets. 447 yak, 4 touchdowns, 69.2 QB rating. So the coverage numbers are pretty aces. 6 QB pressures on 24 pass rush attempts, pretty good rate there. 22 missed tackles on 115 career tackles. That needs to get better. 11 penalties, and most of them, like almost half of them were in that 1 year. And you can look at his snap distribution: 1,400 coverage, over 1,000 in run defense, 24 as a pass rusher. Over 1,800 as an outside corner, 400 snaps in the slot. So they pretty quickly figured out he wasn't as good in the slot, it looks like to me. Almost 200 as a box defensive back, 10 free safety, 9 defensive line, 9 snaps outside the tackle when he lines up on the defensive line. And that's the story with him. That's the numbers. And I think it paints a pretty clear picture of the kind of picture you're getting, a player you're getting. If you were to make assumptions based off these numbers, those assumptions would probably be correct. But we'll talk more about him in a couple hours here.